I never thought I'd be the kind of person to pick up a hitchhiker. I had heard too many stories about the dangers lurking on the roadside. Yet there I was, driving down a desolate stretch of highway late one night, when I spotted him standing by the side of the road. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the barren landscape. He was a young man, perhaps in his late 20s, wearing a frayed denim jacket and jeans that looked like they had seen better days. His hair was disheveled, and his face bore a wild, unkempt look. As I slowed down, he approached my car with an unsettling grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the passenger door, and he climbed in without a word. "Thanks for stopping," he said, his voice rough and gravelly. "I didn't think anyone would pick me up out here." "Not many people do," I replied, keeping my tone neutral, trying to gauge him. "Where are you headed?" "Just a little farther down," he said, waving his hand vaguely. "Just trying to get to a friend's place. You know how it is." The silence stretched between us as I resumed driving, the hum of the tires against the asphalt the only sound. I stole glances at him. He seemed to be scanning the surroundings, as if he were looking for something. Or someone. "Do you believe in fate?" he suddenly asked, turning his gaze on me, his eyes piercing. "I guess so," I replied, feeling a chill creep up my spine. "I do," he said with an unsettling smile. "I believe everything happens for a reason." The road was winding now, bordered by thick trees that loomed ominously in the dark. I felt an urge to turn back, but the thought of leaving him stranded out here made me uneasy. As we drove, he began to share stories that grew increasingly disturbing, tales of people he'd met on the road, strange encounters, and bizarre coincidences. I listened, my heart racing with every unsettling detail. He recounted a story about a family he'd met who vanished after picking him up years ago, their car found abandoned in a ravine. "Funny, isn't it?" he mused, a glimmer of madness in his eyes. "Sometimes you just don't know who you're letting into your life." I forced a chuckle, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. "Yeah, I guess you're right." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're not afraid of me, are you?" "No," I replied, too quickly, realizing how hollow it sounded. As the minutes ticked by, the atmosphere in the car shifted. The temperature seemed to drop, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. My instincts screamed for me to find a reason to let him out, but I didn't want to provoke him. Suddenly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn knife, the blade glinting in the dim light. My heart raced as he examined it, turning it over in his hands. "This little thing has seen a lot of action," he said, his eyes flicking up to meet mine. "Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to survive." "Put that away," I said, trying to sound firm, but my voice trembled. "Relax," he chuckled, an unsettling laughter echoing in the confined space. "I'm not going to hurt you, at least not yet." Panic surged through me as I glanced around for a way to escape. But the road was desolate, surrounded by nothing but trees and darkness. "Do you ever wonder what you would do if you were in a life or death situation?" he asked, tilting his head, a twisted smile creeping across his lips. "What lengths would you go to?" "Look, man, just let me know where to drop you off," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He leaned back in his seat, still clutching the knife. "I'm not even sure I want to get out yet. There's something about you. Something interesting." My grip on the steering wheel tightened. I needed to think fast. I spotted a dim light in the distance, an old gas station. "All right, I'll drop you off there," I said, my voice firming up. He didn't respond, but continued to stare out the window, a disturbing grin stretching across his face. The station was deserted, flickering lights casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. I pulled in, heart pounding as I turned off the engine. "Get out," I demanded. He looked at me, surprise flickering across his features before that unnerving smile returned. "What's the rush?" "Get out," I shouted, adrenaline fueling my anger. All right," he said, raising his hands in mock surrender. He opened the door and stepped out into the night, the cool air swirling around him like a cloak. I watched him as he stood by the car, his face illuminated by the flickering lights of the gas station. "You know, this isn't the end for me," he said, his voice low. "I'll be around. I always am." As I turned the key to start the engine, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw him still standing there, staring at me with those wild eyes. I didn't dare look back as I sped away, the feeling of dread creeping back as I drove into the night. Hours later, as I pulled into my driveway, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had escaped whatever darkness he carried.